My son Aaron Walker's last birthday wish was for us three to go to Disneyland. But Chris Walker, my husband, never liked me or our son. I begged him endlessly, and he finally agreed. The night before our departure, Chris vanished. Aaron passed away with his wish unfulfilled. After handling the funeral alone, I discovered Chris in a photo on my sister Sharon Norris' Instagram post. The caption read, "I told him I wanted to see snow, and he flew me thousands of miles just so I could." My heart didn't crack open in that moment. It had been breaking for years. I simply gathered my belongings in silence. Not one tear, not one outburst. But when I told him I was leaving, Chris wept and begged me to stay. It didn't shock me. Chris had always been ready to drop everything for Sharon. I had never been his exception. To him, I was just an ambitious woman looking to climb higher in life. How could I compete with the person he had always cherished above all else? After visiting Aaron's grave, I returned to the villa that was supposed to be our marital home. In truth, Chris rarely stayed there. It had been more Aaron's home and mine. Everywhere I looked, I saw my son's presence, his laughter frozen in photographs, his toys scattered in corners. My chest ached as I started packing them away. I decided every trace of our life together had to go. When I carried my suitcase downstairs, I stopped in my tracks. Chris had just walked in, carrying Sharon in his arms. Concern was etched across his face. He moved right past me, as though I were invisible. He didn't even glance at me, but that was nothing new. When Sharon was around, I ceased to exist in his world. Then his gaze fell to the suitcase at my feet. His voice was flat, almost bored. "Amber Norris, another one of your attention-seeking acts." Sharon clung to his neck and gave me a soft, innocent look. "Amber," I twisted my ankle. "Chris said your place was nearby, so he brought me here. You don't mind, do you?" It was just a twisted ankle. I stood there and watched him set her gently onto the sofa, fetch an ice pack, and tend to her like she was made of porcelain. I remember the time I was in a car accident that left my leg broken. The hospital had called, saying a family member's signature was needed before they could operate. I phoned Chris. His reply had been cold. "A broken leg isn't life or death. Don't bother me with this." He was the only family I had left. Chris refused to sign the papers, so everything dragged on longer than it needed to. In the meantime, I leaned on a friend who had the time and willingness to help me. When love exists, you can feel it. And when it's gone, that truth is just as obvious. "Fine, Chris," I told him quietly, "as you wish, we're finished." The word divorce almost slipped from my lips, but there was no point. We'd never even made our marriage legal. The ceremony had been rushed, and no license was ever filed. He didn't even look at me, assuming I was just jealous of Sharon. What now? Changing strategies again? When you couldn't use your son to threaten me, now you're using yourself. A year ago, Aaron had been diagnosed with brain cancer. We'd received more critical illness notices than I could count. Every time, he would ask for his father, hoping Chris might come. But Chris never once visited. To him, I was just using Aaron's condition to get pity. After 10 years together, this was how little he thought of me. I wiped my tears and lifted my suitcase. "Believe whatever you want. I'm leaving." Before I could reach the door, Sharon's voice rang out. "Chris, I heard you were supposed to take Aaron to Disneyland. You didn't cancel that trip just to take me to the mountains, did you?" No wonder Amber's upset. Chris brushed it off. "Don't worry. There are priorities. Disneyland can wait, but the snow won't last forever." A bitter laugh escaped me. Without another word, I rolled my suitcase toward the door. Something must have clicked for him, because Chris suddenly grabbed my wrist. "It's the middle of the night, Amber. Where do you think you're going?" Then he saw my swollen, red eyes and paused. "You're really crying this hard over missing Disneyland?" For a moment, there was pity in his gaze. "Let me clear my schedule next month. I'll take Aaron then, all right?" Next month. What next month did Aaron have left? If he cared even a fraction more about his son, he'd know how cruel those words were. I pulled my hand away. "Don't bother." He stared at his empty palm, clearly stunned that I no longer clung to him like before. He stepped forward to follow me, but Sharon wrapped her arms around him. "Chris, it's my fault. I shouldn't have competed with a child for your attention, even if I knew Aaron was faking his illness. I've only made Amber angry with me." Faking? My mind went blank. By the time I came to, my hand had already struck her cheek. Chris's expression shifted instantly from guilt to outrage. He shielded Sharon with his body. "Amber, what's gotten into you? She's your sister. I glared at Sharon. Watch what you say. Sharon gave a hurt little smile. If my sister won't admit Aaron is faking, I won't press it. I turned to Chris. You think Aaron's pretending too? He didn't answer. And Aaron wasn't anywhere in sight. In that calm, detached tone of his, Chris asked, Where did you take him this time? If he had ever bothered to come home, he'd have seen the dining table buried under medical records and bottles of medicine. But he never came. I remembered Aaron's final wish. One trip to Disneyland as a family. I had knelt before Chris, begging him to go. I'd even clung to his legs, promising that it would be the last time I ever asked him for anything, that I'd set him free afterward. He had looked down at me in surprise, eyes flickering with something like relief. You mean it? Yes, I had whispered, tears streaming down my face. We'd known each other since childhood. I was the one who found him by the river and begged my parents to adopt him. He became my brother. When my parents divorced, Sharon went to live with my father. I begged Chris to come with me and my mother instead, not realizing that my choice planted a seed of resentment in him. He had wanted to follow Sharon, but because of me, he could only watch her leave for life abroad. Later, when my mother was dying, she entrusted me to Chris. He married me in name only, no friends, no family, no certificate. When my mother asked on her deathbed when we'd make it official, Chris dodged the question. The moment we left the hospital, his patience evaporated. Wasn't it enough that your mother forced me into marrying you? Now you want to legalize it? Before I could reply, he cut me off. Don't get ideas. Sharon's coming back. She won't want a man who's already been married. Sharon had always hesitated to accept his proposal because of me and Aaron. But I was ready to let him go. The only thing I couldn't understand was why he wouldn't give Aaron, his own son, one final memory. It was one thing not to love me, but how could he be so cold to Aaron? I looked at Chris, feeling nothing but disappointment. Once I thought his face was like something from a painting. Now, it only filled me with disgust. He was about to speak, but Sharon cut in, her voice soft and pitiful. Chris, my foot still hurts and my face too. Can you check if it's swollen? I'm worried it might affect tomorrow's business event. Immediately, his focus shifted to her. She collapsed into his arms, tears gathering in her eyes. The slap I'd given her earlier had left a bright red handprint on her pale skin. He wiped her tears gently, the way he used to wipe mine when we were young. I couldn't remember the last time he'd shown me even that much kindness. His voice was cold. Amber, apologize to your sister. I lifted my chin. No. His eyes narrowed in surprise. For years, I'd walked on eggshells around him, offering him every ounce of my care, terrified of being disliked. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Not when Sharon was in the room. After a beat, Chris sat back down with her in his arms. Amber, don't make me angry. At his signal, a bodyguard stepped in, blocking my path and dragging me back before them. Chris lounged on the sofa, legs crossed, pressure radiating from his calm gaze. Apologize to Sharon. Sharon gave me a triumphant smile before turning to him. It's all right. Amber didn't mean it. He looked at her with pity. You're too soft-hearted. She's never treated you like family. Then his eyes locked on me. Anyone who hurts Sharon will pay double. Memories flashed, being cornered by bullies in elementary school, Chris arriving just in time to fight them off, standing in front of me like a shield. That boy was gone. Now, his protection was for someone else. Make her kneel, he ordered. A bodyguard forced me down. Chris looked faintly pleased until Sharon stepped in again. Chris, she's my sister. Men might go too far, let me handle it.
She slapped me. Twice.
Her sharp nails left a stinging cut across my cheek. Then she feigned concern. Oh no, Chris, I hurt her. She deserves it, he said coldly. You're too kind for your own good. The bodyguard released me, and I stumbled to the floor. Amber, you owe Sharon an apology, Chris said. Owe her? For accusing my dying son of faking his illness? I laughed bitterly. In your dreams. I hate you, Chris. For the first time, my gaze held no trace of love, only hatred. He frowned, as if my defiance unsettled him. Do as I say, he warned, and I'll give you what you want. Time with your son, the title of my wife. Once, I would have given anything to be his wife. But in the public eye, Sharon had always been the one on his arm. People assumed she was Mrs. Walker. Now that I no longer cared, he tried to use the title as bait. I met his eyes. No need. We're finished. His lips curled into a sneer.
What?
No more pretending you need me for your son. Before I could answer, Sharon spoke up sweetly. Amber, stop lying to him. If Aaron was really dying, why would you be here instead of at the hospital? Shut up, I snapped. You have no right to say his name. She put on a wounded expression. All right, I won't mention it again. Please don't be angry with me. Chris's jaw tightened at my hostility toward her. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant, Mason Wills, putting it on speaker so I could hear every word. Mason, find out what hospital Amber's son is in, he said smoothly. Tell them to stop his treatment. It was a power play, his way of tightening control. But Mason's reply stopped him cold. Mr. Walker, Aaron passed away. The day after you disappeared. How could that even be true? Chris's voice sharpened instantly. His tone shifted from shock to cold accusation. Mason, you've really grown bold teaming up with Amber to lie to me? The other end of the line went quiet. Moments later, after Chris hung up, Mason sent him the funeral details and cemetery location. Chris read the message, his hands going still. His eyes locked on me, wide with disbelief. Something this serious, why didn't you tell me? A humorless laugh escaped me. And how exactly was I supposed to? The night before we were meant to take Aaron to Disney, Chris had turned his phone off and disappeared completely. Regret flickered across his face. If you had told me sooner, I cut him off. Haven't I tried enough times? Aaron's birthdays, Children's Day, the days he was finally discharged from the ICU, every single time I reached out. Aaron had longed for his father desperately. He would call over and over, hoping Chris would pick up. At first, Chris offered half-hearted promises, saying he'd visit soon. Eventually, he stopped answering altogether. He was too busy escorting Sharon to variety shows. I remember Aaron, hooked up to his ventilator, pointing at the TV with bright eyes, asking, "Is that Dad?" I couldn't tell him the truth. Aaron had seen Chris so few times that he couldn't even remember his father's face. Chris's eyes clouded with guilt. I thought Aaron was just like your mother, pretending to be worse off to guilt me into coming home. When my mother was gravely ill, she used to call Chris whenever he stayed away too long, begging him to be with me. He decided it was all just a trick. So when Aaron fell ill, Chris assumed I was doing the same thing. In the beginning, when Aaron's symptoms first appeared and doctors couldn't explain them, I had called Chris again and again. He came back once, but the moment he saw the test results, suspicion took over. After that, nothing I said could convince him. Now, even faced with the truth, Chris shook his head. He looked fine the last time I saw him. I almost laughed. The last time? Don't joke. That was nearly 2 years ago. He had just started walking then. Do you even remember his face? Chris's lips pressed together. He had no answer. He stepped closer and brushed his hand against my cheek, his voice low. I'm sorry, Amber. I really am. I slapped his hand away. Sorry? Was that the best he could give me for Aaron's death? I searched his face, looking for the man I had loved for more than a decade, and wondered if I'd ever truly known him. Please, I said bitterly. A man like Mr. Walker doesn't understand what an apology is worth. For the first time, Chris seemed unsure of himself. A shadow of panic passed through his eyes. He knew I was slipping away. Amber, he said carefully, we can't bring him back, but I can make it right. If marriage is what you want then. I almost laughed. Did he really think this was about a title? That my child's death could be repaid with a wedding ring? No, Chris, I said flatly. We're finished. His composure cracked. Amber, why must you be so stubborn? Isn't this what you always wanted? Yes, once upon a time it was. I had wanted to be his wife, so badly, I'd thrown away my pride. I had loved him so much I stayed by his side without a name or title, even after we had a child together. I had loved him so much I ignored the endless rumors about him and Sharon. But loving him had worn me down to nothing. I didn't have the strength to keep this up. I turned and left the mansion, my body aching with every step. This time Chris didn't follow, he just watched me go. I went back to the villa my mother had left me. The walls were lined with memories of Aaron. I couldn't accept that he was gone. Days blurred together. Sometimes I'd cry until my voice broke. Other times I'd forget to eat or sleep. One day, I collapsed. In that moment, I thought no one would care if I never woke up. But Chris was the one who found me. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. He was sitting silently nearby. He called the doctor, then asked Mason to bring my favorite oatmeal. It brought back an old memory. How, when I was sick before, I'd insist that he make it for me. He'd grumble and roll his eyes, but he always brought it anyway. I'd cling to him, teasing, "You're the best, brother." His ears would turn red, and my heart would race for days. I thought it meant he cared. Later, I learned he'd only done it because my mother told him to. This time, I refused to let myself imagine anything more. I turned away from the bowl. The sound of the spoon clattering against it was sharp and impatient. "Amber," he said, "look at you, skin and bones. All this over that man's child. Is it really worth it?" The words hit me like a slap. My chest rose and fell sharply. That man's child. Chris was the only man I had ever been with. And Sharon had returned on our wedding day. He had come home reeking of alcohol, clinging to me as if he couldn't bear to let go. That night, in my weakness, I didn't push him away. By morning, his memories had returned along with his contempt. He glanced at the marks on my skin and scoffed. "You knew my heart belonged to Sharon, yet you still threw yourself at me." Not long after, I found out I was pregnant with Aaron. From the start, Chris saw my child as a chain meant to bind him. But it went deeper than that. He truly believed Aaron wasn't his. I laughed bitterly. "Then tell me, Chris, whose child is he?" His expression hardened. "You know the answer." "I'm not wasting my breath." He shoved the bowl away and left after a quick call from Sharon. I didn't want to stay in that hospital. That place was where Aaron had taken his last breath in my arms. I went back to my villa. My phone lit up. Chris had called me more than 10 times. No wonder he had found me so quickly. Later that night, there was a knock. Chris stood there, face tight with worry. When he saw I was unharmed, his shoulders loosened. "Why are you running around? You're still weak. What does it matter to you? We're nothing now." He pressed his lips into a thin line. "I was wrong about Aaron. Can we stop fighting over this? He's gone, but we can have children in the future." Future children? My heart froze. No one could replace Aaron. "Go on then, if he wasn't yours, whose was he?" He met my eyes without hesitation. "Troy Smith's." The name hit me like a slap. Troy had been my childhood friend, but after Chris moved into my life, we barely spoke. The only time I'd ask Troy for help was when Aaron needed urgent surgery and no one else was available to sign the consent forms. "Chris, what proof do you even have? The day after our wedding, you went to the Moon Club. Sharon saw you go into a private room with Troy and leave together." So it was Sharon's word. Of course. Chris stepped in, grabbed my wrist, and pressed me against the door. "Right after our wedding, you couldn't even keep up appearances? Greedy, wanting it all. And to think I believed." I pushed him off. "So, you think Aaron isn't yours? Look at him. Does he look anything like me? Children all look the same when they're small." I didn't understand how he could see such differences. I fetched Aaron's old toothbrush and a few strands of hair from his chemo days.
Here.
"Test them yourself." I shut the door in his face. By the next morning, he had his answer. I had even given him recent photos. Aaron was his mirror image. There was no denying it. When I opened the door, Chris was slumped outside, surrounded by cigarette butts, looking like the weight of the world had crushed him. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was mine. I was terrified the test would prove he wasn't, terrified you'd run away with Troy. So I never checked. I thought if I stayed away, I could keep you both here. I stared at him, my voice cold. "You never even bothered to find out the truth. You just assumed." "It doesn't matter anymore," I said finally. Aaron was gone. No answers or regrets could bring him back. Chris's voice broke. "Amber, forgive me. I'll do anything. If you want to marry me, I'll marry you. If you want my life, take it." His guilt sat heavy in the air, threatening to spill from his eyes. For a moment, the man before me looked almost like the version of myself from years ago, when I still hoped for his approval. "I want my family's company back," I told him plainly. The night before, I had dreamed of Aaron. In the dream, he had taken my hand and told me not to live like a shadow. He wanted me to walk outside, to breathe, to live fully. So I chose to start with this. Chris blinked, clearly unprepared for my request, but then gave a reluctant nod. For years, he had harbored resentment toward me and my mother. He had always believed we kept him around only to help with our failing business, that my mother treated him like a loyal dog to be commanded, and that marriage was just another chain to bind him. The truth was far less dramatic. My father's betrayal had destroyed my parents' marriage, and when he left, he took most of our wealth with him. abandoning me while I was still a child. Chris had a sharp business mind. That was why my mother trusted him to run the company, and under his leadership, it had thrived. Later, when he was reclaimed by the Walker family, he merged our company with theirs. At the time, it had seemed like a smart, even natural move. Now that our marriage was over, it was time to untangle what had been woven together. It would be difficult. Our interests and finances had become tightly interlocked. I began spending my days in his office, poring over reports and contracts. Once, I wouldn't have been allowed past the reception desk. Now I could walk in and work at his table. He had lunch sent in. When he saw me buried in paperwork, he said, "Eat first. There's no need to rush." I didn't look up. "The sooner this is done, the better. I can't keep depending on you." His expression stilled. "We don't have to separate things. You could just take your dividends every year." "No," I said evenly, "but thank you, Mr. Walker, for the years you've managed it." A faint, almost bitter smile touched his lips. "It's been a long time since you called me brother." The word pulled me back to high school, to the day I'd almost confessed my feelings. "Brother, I need to tell you something," I had said back then. But he had looked at me sharply and cut me off with a sneer. "Don't call me that. It makes me sick." The letter I had written for him stayed crumpled in my pocket. I never used the word again. Now I met his eyes and said, "Don't call me Amber. That makes me sick." He froze, recognition flickering across his face. Before he could respond, the door swung open and Sharon stepped in. "Chris, weren't we going to that event?" "What are you doing?" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me at his desk. Chris glanced at me, as though gauging my reaction. I gave none, picking up my lunch again. "What are you doing here?" he asked her, his tone tinged with irritation. She forced a smile. "You haven't been answering my calls." He rubbed his temples. "I've been busy. Go home, we'll talk later." Instead, she sat down, helping herself to his plate. "I'm starving. Mind if I join you, Amber?" Her voice dripped with false sweetness. I set down my fork. "Actually, I do mind. Your company is unappetizing." Her face stiffened, but she glanced at Chris, clearly expecting him to defend her. Instead, he waved for Mason to see her out. Once she was gone, he said quickly, "There's nothing between us. If it weren't for her asking her parents to help me when I was young, I might not be here."
That startled me.
Was Sharon the one who had supposedly convinced them? He went on, "If you're willing, I'll announce at the Walker Group banquet that we're engaged again. I'll give you the wedding you deserve." I refused. What was broken could not be repaired, and Aaron's absence lay between us like a wall. Still, I went to the banquet for business, not him. Chris spotted me almost immediately and made his way over. "I knew you'd come," he said, taking my hand. "I'll tell everyone you're the only woman I'll ever marry." I pulled away. "Don't flatter yourself. I'm not here for you." He smirked. "Then who?" Before I could answer, someone approached. "Mr. Walker, and this is?" "My fiancé," Chris said. "I am not," I shot back. He laughed softly. "She's just teasing me." Once the man left, I said coldly, "This isn't a game. We're finished." He gripped my wrist. "Too late. You came, and I'm not letting you go." It wasn't until Mason called him away that I managed to shake him off. Turning, I caught Sharon watching from across the room, her gaze sharp and venomous. She strode toward me, without pretense. "I never thought he'd bring you," she said. "I didn't come with him." "Why you?" she demanded. "Why do people like you? Why do you always win? Why did Mom pick you over me?" "It doesn't matter. Chris will always be mine." Her hatred was so fierce it almost startled me. When our parents divorced, Mom had begged to keep us both. Sharon had chosen to go with Dad for his wealth. "I think you're unwell," I said simply.
She leaned in.
"You think you're clever? Chris will never believe you over me. I'm the one who convinced Dad to take him in." I met her eyes. "Is that what you told him? That you are the one who saved him?" Her mask faltered for a second. I swirled the wine in my glass. "What do you think he'll do when I tell him you lied, and that you once called him dirty and unworthy of help?" Panic flashed in her gaze, but she smirked again. "Go ahead. Mom's dead, Dad's on my side, and you have nothing to prove your words. We'll see who he believes." I stayed calm, unwilling to give Sharon or Chris any more of my attention. If they wanted to spend their lives locked in their own little world, that was their business. I had come here to network, not to waste my time with them. Chris walked onto the stage and addressed the audience. Thank you all for attending the Walker Group's new product launch, he said, his voice warm but his gaze fixed on me in the crowd. There's also something personal I want to share about my marriage. Before he could go on, Sharon gripped my wrist. Tell me, she hissed, if both of us were hurt at the same time, who would Chris choose? Before I could answer, she yanked me straight into the champagne tower. Crystals shattered around us, the sharp edges biting into our skin. We both hit the floor, but her cry of pain came first. Chris was at her side instantly, hauling her up. What happened? Sharon pressed her injured arm to her chest, looking the perfect victim. Don't blame Amber. She's still upset about losing Aaron. Blood trickled down my leg from a deep cut, but that wasn't what made my grip tighten on the glass shard beside me. Without thinking, I flicked it toward Sharon. Chris blocked it, snapping at me. Enough. I know you've been struggling lately, but is that a reason to lash out at Sharon? Her lips curled into a smug little smile against his shoulder, a silent message. See? One move, and you're dancing. Instead of reacting, I smiled. Slowly, I pulled out my phone and turned the volume to maximum. Sharon's voice rang out over the room. Yes, I lied to him. Tell me, if you and I were both hurt, who would Chris choose? The look on Chris's face was worth every second of preparation. Sharon lunged for the phone, panic twisting her features. Amber, you set me up? I stepped back. No, you set yourself up. I just pressed play. Chris shoved her away. She stumbled, falling onto the glass shards again, her scream slicing through the murmurs of the crowd. The guests whispered behind their hands, scandal written all over their faces. Ignoring the cuts on her skin, Sharon crawled to Chris and clung to his leg. It's not what it sounds like. I loved you too much. Everyone always chose her over me. I couldn't let you go. Chris stared down at her coldly. The reason I treated you well was because I thought you saved me once. But that was never you. He turned to me, reaching out. Amber, are you hurt? Let me help you. I pushed his hand away. Don't touch me. Something in my voice must have told him I meant it, because he hesitated. And then another presence was suddenly at my side. Before I could turn, I was swept into someone's arms. Troy looked down at me with a half smile. How did you grow up learning to swallow so much? The unexpected kindness made my throat tighten. Chris stepped forward, bristling. Put her down. You have no right to hold Amber. Troy's eyes flicked to him, sharp and mocking. And you do. I didn't let Chris answer. Chris, just go. You're the last person I want to see right now. For a moment, he looked almost lost. But I turned my face away. Troy carried me out and took me straight to the hospital. After that night, Sharon's fall from grace was swift and merciless. Her facial injuries kept her from ever working in the entertainment industry again, and whispers of her deception followed her everywhere. Chris began his silent vigil outside my apartment, night after night, but I never went down to meet him. If we crossed paths in public, we were strangers. He sent projects to my company. I accepted the business, but ignored the man. Then one night, he stumbled into my office, reeking of alcohol and looking thinner than I'd ever seen him. Amber, he rasped, I'm sorry. I know who Sharon really is now. I'll never speak to her again. I'd heard she'd been blacklisted, forced to pay enormous penalties. Whether Chris orchestrated it out of malice or for my benefit, I didn't care. It doesn't matter to me, Chris. Whatever happens to you or her, it's not my concern. His eyes shone with desperation. Do you really mean that? Please tell me what I can do for you to forgive me. My voice was steady, even though it cut us both. You want forgiveness? Bring Aaron back from the dead. A shadow of defeat swept over him, snuffing out whatever spark used to linger in his eyes. He dropped his head onto the desk and broke into raw, bitter sobs. My patience was gone. If you're going to cry, do it somewhere else. Just looking at you annoys me. His voice trembled, but he still tried to jest. So, should I just cry farther away? Can you stop being so irritated with me? Not long after, he began turning up at my office with flowers and glittering trinkets. He didn't stop there. My employees found themselves on the receiving end of his generosity too. Soon, they were all telling me what a wonderful man he was. Their praise only added to my frustration until I decided the easiest escape was to move my company overseas. When word reached him, he came running. Amber, you're leaving? Is this because I've been pestering you? I swear I'll stop. Please just stay. True to his word, he never showed up in person again. But when our paths crossed in business, he always made it easier for me. dropping prices, making concessions I hadn't even asked for. Whether it was guilt or some twisted form of compensation, I accepted it all. In the end, I didn't relocate. Instead, I poured my energy into expanding abroad. Years later, while overseas, I unexpectedly crossed paths with Chris. His eyes darted past me, landing on Troy. "Why are you with him?" Chris demanded. Troy's lips curved into a slow, mocking smile. "Why shouldn't I be?" Chris's gaze swung back to me, pleading for some kind of explanation. My head throbbed just looking at him. I pulled an envelope from my bag and slid it across the table. "I'm getting married next month. Consider this your invitation." His eyes brimmed instantly. "You're marrying him? And me? We had a wedding, so what does that make me?" That so-called wedding of his was nothing more than a farce to me. It had never even touched my memory. Troy leaned back and sneered. "You're the ex-husband who couldn't measure up. Now leave." Chris had always thought my anger was just a lover's tantrum, that I'd come running back if he threw me a bone. But when he saw me in my gown, standing beside Troy beneath the arch of flowers, he finally understood. I didn't look his way, no matter how desperately he called out. Instead, I slid my hand into Troy's and smiled. "Take care of me, Mr. Smith. I'm counting on you." Troy, who had built a life on pretending nothing mattered, suddenly had tears glistening in his eyes. "Amber, you're finally looking at me. You're mine." I wrapped my arms around him as he shook with quiet sobs. "All right," I whispered. "I'm yours."